Hello, my name's Kate Cooper from the Institute of Leadership and Management. When I first got the programme, I got a draft programme round, and there was somebody called Kate Morgan talking about effective leadership. And I thought, you know, that looks really interesting. And I'm looking forward to hearing that. And then I realised it was a typo and it was actually me. So I really hope I don't disappoint myself by boring myself. What I'm really going to do, and I will try and get us a bit back on time, a bit like EasyJet pilots. We will make up the time. Is to talk about some of our research that we've done recently, and particularly focus on what is a recurrent theme of relationships. So although the title of my talk is Effective Leadership, what I think I'll really be talking about is effective relationship management. In 2014, we decided to undertake some research attempting to look at the future trends in leadership and management. Particularly, our interest being particularly, of course, what leadership and management development should we be encouraging organisations to engage in order to get their leaders and managers future ready. And we were very influenced by the notion of Tayyip's work on the Black Swan. I mean, it was very popular when his second edition came out. The idea that Black Swan events happen, they're a big surprise, they have a huge impact, but from his point of view, that everybody says, aha, all the signs were there, we just didn't see them. And there's that sort of refusal to accept that actually we can't really predict the future. It was a question of if we'd looked properly, of course we would have seen the financial crisis in 2008. Of course we would have seen the Berlin Wall coming down. We just didn't look properly. So what we were saying is that actually we're not trying to predict the future. What we're trying to do is look at how we develop leaders and managers to have the resilience to cope with whatever the future throws at them. So they're ready for the future, but they're not trying to predict and control it. So the end. Well, I have saved us some time, haven't I? Thank you, Kate, that was lovely. Yeah. Yeah, you're also hopeful then that she said enough. That's what it looked like, a blurry version, 2020 vision, future trends. So, as I say, we were really interested in what do people need to be doing now in order to be ready. So we went out and asked, various experts, and we conducted quite a large survey as we normally do. And these, I bet you're excited given that it was 2014. These are the trends that we found. That relationships were seen, and I have a slide that shows you a bit more detail about that, are important, but not only within organisations, increasingly with external stakeholders. The interconnectedness of business, the complexity and the interrelatedness of supply chains were being recognised as increasingly important. Again, no surprise, some of you who might have been up recently at 20 to 6 in the morning after waiting for Farming Today might have heard me talking about this on Radio 4. Oh, what, you didn't? No, I don't think even my family could be bothered to get up. And I was very excited. And what I was actually saying was that flexible working that they picked up is becoming so important. The remote working across different time zones, working with people you don't see. And so, again, another key, hardly a surprise, I think, a trend for there. But what this meant for us, or what was of interest to us, there was universal agreement that this makes leadership and management more difficult, more relationships to deal with, and different ways of doing it. So the challenges were these, if I put them into the challenges of leadership and management, we've got a more dispersed workforce to manage. They're all over the place working at different times. Flatter organisation structures, and of course the flatter your organisation structure, the more you need influence, the more you need to be able to work with people. because you haven't got hierarchy to rely on. And I think Kathy was talking about that this morning. And one thing that came out very much from the flexible working was measuring and reporting on performance, and how that takes up so much time in terms of reporting, but also we're talking about how do you measure people that you don't see, and you're looking at outputs all the time. And of course organisations still are very geared up to the idea of being able to see effort and be able to see hard work by presenteeism. And then, as I've already alluded to, we've got much more complicated supply chains. So these are all the sorts of things. And remember, and those of you who do have teams to lead and to manage, there's also the day job that you're supposed to be getting on with and being bombarded with, oh my goodness, all these future things I have to engage with. I had a visual aid actually to show you. It's a magazine, but I have forgotten it. So, and I only have one, so I was having to, show it around. Oh, actually, my colleague is holding it up over there. It's not available. It's pre-publication. That's why I've only got one. It's Dialogue magazine, and there's an interview in it with Charles Handy, who is a management guru, and he has been talking about the future of work. Obviously, far greater reach than ILM has. And he was talking about how relationships, the longer you're in a relationship with somebody, the more you tend to trust them. Now, I won't go into personal things there, obviously, because we've all been probably caught out there. But in a business sense, you're much more likely to cooperate with somebody that you've worked with for a long time. So when we ask particularly about relationships, we ask people, how important are relationships compared to 5 years ago? And with the exception of, this is one of our more complex offerings in terms of trying to inform an audience. Essentially, green is more important. So nearly every type of organisation and size said, we can see this as a trend. This is becoming much more important. And I think the amount larger organisations spend on relationship management training supports that. The only one that seemed to think that it was more or less the same was small businesses. Now, we didn't investigate that any further, but I think the real reason is they know. And I think that, again, that's evidence today about the micro businesses. They get relationships and they manage them and they work with them. So I think small businesses were saying, well, no, they're not more important. They've always been important. But I can't vouch for that. That's conjecture on my part. But this led us to another research question, and this is where, leading to my appearance on Radio 4. What is it like working with people that you see infrequently, rarely, or never? And again, I'm talking here now, but you've heard so much of what I've said already from other contributors. It was the danger of micromanaging that really seemed to upset people in our sample. However, and this was a trend that it seemed the further away you are, this people finding it a problem is up on the left, but across the bottom we tried to measure how far you were from your co-workers. That was the variable there. And it seemed in many ways the further you are from people, the better you get on with them. We like that a lot. But one of the things that we came out of this research is when you are a manager and you are managing people a long way that you rarely or infrequently see, your interactions with them are so auditable. So if you do upset them with an unkindly worded email or text message or voicemail, they have an audit trail of your indiscretions and your poor behaviour. And I didn't understand what you said. Well, it was very clear in the email. We're all of a sudden much more accountable and much more auditable as managers. And that, of course, is a pressure on the manager themselves. Not surprisingly, lack of social interaction. Apart from, curiously, if you're only about 50 miles away, you don't miss it at all. Again, it seems that global, very far apart organisations, they seem to have got ways of managing that. And if we look at the difficulty accessing help and advice, the people who are very, very dispersed didn't see that as a problem. Again, that's something we couldn't investigate, we could only conjecture, but I think that's probably because if you've got no chance of seeing somebody, you work quite hard at that and you have the technology in place that supports that. If you're near 10 miles away, it's, oh, well, never mind, let's all meet up then. Or I'll take my computer into London and get them to fix it. There's sort of make do's and make do and mend the nearer you are to people. And the more you, of course, you can relate. But what we found is that the need to do meaningful work and to make a valuable contribution, all the things that Kathy was talking about this morning, are just as important as when you're working remotely in virtual teams or when you're turning up in the same office every day. And what people value so much about remote working was the autonomy it gave them, the control over their own work life, whether that's a balance or an imbalance. It was that notion. And although it's been associated normally with caring, oh, it's great to, have hours to combine with caring, what we found is very young people with no caring responsibilities whatsoever, as far as I can see, really do value that autonomy that flexible working gives them. So that was consistent across the generations. So we have this greater need to evaluate performance. How well are we doing? How are we evidencing what we're doing? And what I really wanted was to show you how some of our outmoded ways, or how outmoded have ways of measuring performance become. And I've chosen the balanced scorecard because most people have heard of it. It is its 30th anniversary next year, which some of you might want to celebrate. Oh, obviously not. The balanced scorecard was a way of trying to say, look, it's not all about the money. We have to measure people. We have to measure organisations other than using financial measures. Let's look at how well they learn. Let's look at how well they manage internal processes. Let's look at how well they delight customers. And so really, although it's often presented as this static scorecard, it's actually a cycle. It's the relationship between all of the parts is very important, starting, of course, with the individuals, the employees, and that imperative to learn and develop. So I've changed it there into a cycle. So we've got people learning, so they're good at processes, they're good with customers. And if you get those right, of course, you'll delight your customers, they'll keep coming back, and you'll make a financial reward. And there will be financial rewards, or whoever supports you will continue to do so. However, what the balanced scorecard doesn't do is actually reflect the new complexity of modern business, and also these important requirements, most initially to stay in business. The life of a business now is contracting all the time. It's becoming shorter and shorter. So how sustainable you are, and not just in an environmental sense, is really important. And how you manage these relationships with suppliers and different stakeholders. Again, the balanced scorecard is expanded now. So but it's still very relational in its nature. So we're only going to stay in business if we remember that organisations have an increasingly short life. And what people often forget is that actually they're social places, and that it's a community of humans, and that is what keeps the organisation sustainable, and that's what keeps it going. If we think about these new and different relationships with partners, again, the only way we're really going to survive is to be able to learn faster, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, to develop that resilience, that being future ready. And then sadly, I started to compile a list of the sorts of things that we have to learn and find out about. And this is obviously not exhaustive. So managers are updating themselves with all of these things all of the time. And okay, it might be easy because we all have Google, because we all have access to information. But how do we know it's any good? How do we know that somebody hasn't just paid a lot of money to sell us some misinformation? And we have, again, back the I don't know how many of you would call yourselves supporters, devotees, fans of the 70-20-10 model. And however, although there isn't much empirical evidence for it, I think we all know intuitively that you don't half learn a lot from watching other people and talking to them about what you can and can't do and getting that shared understanding. So increasingly, it's the relationships that you're having with the people around you that are really impacting how well you're learning. So, this is a sad day for managers, isn't it? Look at all the things they have to do. And I thought I'd include this because you might like it. I find it a bit busy. I hope you agree with me, this is a bit busy. This is the business in the community work well model, and of course better relationships being absolutely fundamental in their inner wheel. And what they, at the moment, we're working with them actually on promoting mental health and the line manager. Not only the line manager being in good mental health, him or herself, but also being able to identify and support mental ill health amongst the people that they manage. So we have managers who are now, just according to me, obviously learning and development, learning transfer. If anybody goes on a course, it's the line manager that's supposed to help them bring the learning back into the workplace. We've got mental health awareness, support, looking after their own mental health. And Ben, who I think is not here, but he added coaching this morning, do you remember? Manager as coach and mediation. So these people are in the middle of the organisation often with all of these demands being put on them. And of course, as I said before, they have a day job to produce, to complete. So just trying to catch up as I am, we're about to land. I've pictorially represented what I see as the demands that are being put on leaders and managers. They are having to deal with remote teams, they're having to learn, and the backdrop of it's easy to learn now, you can do it in bite-sized chunks, constantly being measured and asked to report on their performance. And they're having, I've used mental health as an example, but of course many people see the line manager as the solution to all the problems in organisations. Often not and often it's the senior teams who see their role is delegating all of these things to those, the middle, the unloved middle, as I like to think of them. So management and leadership are getting more difficult. New ways of working and making them more visible, more accountable, more auditable. Relationships that you used to be able to fix things from close proximity, by able to picking up cues, by watching whether people were stressed or in a good mood so you could ask them to do things, all have to be formalised. We have to rethink how we think about performance and how we report on it. And this is all, this burden is put on managers and leaders. So going back to really where I started, and this is something I personally have been saying for more years than I even like to remember, that actually management development is in essence, it's about improving the quality of relationships that one has with the people one works with. So all of those things can happen. The black swans can arrive, but if you've got good solid relationships and you manage those relationships with the people, you'll cope and you'll survive. Have I done it quickly enough there, David?